Hey everybody, Murphy Daly here with a moment of wonder, and I want to talk about the book that I'm reading right now. I am almost done with The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. This is a amazing book written, I think it was published around 1840. It was prior to the Civil War, and there's a lot of energy around the abolitionist movement and trying to get rid of slavery in America. One of the amazing things about Frederick Douglass, who is an extraordinary human being, is he was a slave and he became free. And he wrote a lot of books. He was very articulate in a time when people had assumed that slaves and African Americans were not articulate. He wrote beautifully. His books are really amazing. This book that he wrote, this first one, which is why I chose it, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, is one that he wrote before he became famous. People were like, this is not possible that this man wrote this book. This had to be ghost written by someone else. Indeed, it was written by him. It was the first one that was written by him, and he wrote many more and had a big influence on America. And so it's an important book of American history. Yesterday I talked about emotional manipulation and talking about using manipulative words and loaded words. What's interesting is Frederick Douglass wrote the most, his story told it all. It was horrible. He talked about the facts. He talked about how the masters of slaves would beat them for within an inch of their lives on a regular basis and starve them. And I think, oh my gosh. But he was not speaking in a pitying way, and he wasn't telling anybody how to feel about it. He told how he felt about it. And it was clear that anyone who was in that situation would feel the same way. He wrote so beautifully and so authentically that it was undeniable. The best people could do to combat what he said, because many people disagreed, there were feelings at the time that slaves didn't have the intelligence to feel pain, which is a great story to tell yourself if you're the one inflicting the pain. It seems amazing to me. I'm like, they're talking about the masters of slaves who are so cruel, so exceedingly cruel. If someone did those things to an animal, they would be arrested now. And so I think about, it seems anomalous in history. Yes, there have been slaves in the history. They talk about slaves in the Bible. There were slaves in Roman times, Spartacus, and lots of slaves were part of history. But why were they so cruel in America? So very amazingly, anomalously cruel and horrible. I try to think, was there anything else like this in history? And the only thing I can think of is how people were treated in the concentration camps. It was different because in the concentration camps, they actually did want the people to die. But it's very similar. There was beatings and starvings in a similar way. And of course, my favorite story about the concentration camps are the story of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, where he discusses his experience in the concentration camps and how dehumanizing it was and how people treated one another. It's a common thing to say, oh, that person is as bad as Hitler. There's even a law, I forget, the first person that brings up Hitler is the one who loses the argument because it's such a trope. Unfortunately, the story of slavery in America shows us that almost anyone can be as bad as Hitler. I think that American slavery is probably worse than history, worse than the genocide of Hitler's time, because it was continuous and it was a torture. God, it's really sad, you guys. This is why we don't read these things now, right? It's because we can't bear to look at it. And yet, we all easily could fall into this. This is part of human nature. Tragically, anyone can be cruel. We are all as bad as Hitler. We all have the potential to be as bad as Hitler. And so it's important to guard my heart against these possibilities, to say, don't go there. Watch yourself. Check your cruelty, check your assumptions, check your prejudices. Don't dehumanize the people that you're talking to. Don't judge them and say, oh, they're just. They don't feel this way. I know who they are. You go down that road, and we have historical examples of what can happen. So Frederick Douglass is amazing. The story itself is a great story. It's an escape story. It's a story of triumphing over incredible odds and of character. The man is extraordinary. In a time when people thought that humans like Frederick Douglass couldn't possibly be this shining example of what they were, he was like, oh yeah, I'm better than what you think I can be. And re-examine all of your assumptions. And part of what he did led to the freedom of all slaves. Kitty. Cat wants to put his paw over my camera. So I'm reading it to remember my history and remember what humans are capable of, what Frederick Douglass himself was capable of in escaping the horrible capacities of human beings in America. So what do you guys think? My cat. I'd love to hear what you think of human capacity, of history, and how we can be aware and stay kind, stay loving, and not judge think we know who the people around us are. All right. Well, if you're watching, let me know. Put a comment, type replay, and share it. I'd love that. Let's continue the conversation.